Now, at the beginning of this Voynich manuscript, I look for patterns, and I don't know if this manuscript is real or not, or it's a fraud. Fraud on what, I don't know. But this is a picture of one of the little alien guys that was found at Roswell. And a couple things struck me. This was done by a nurse at the hospital. That the bodies were 1.3 meters. They're very close to 4 feet. No, 3.5 feet tall maybe. And they had 4 digits on their fingers and with no opposable thumb. So you couldn't grab anything. And then on the end of their fingers they had these little pads, which I believe they used to read things with, because they couldn't see that well. Now, another thing that struck me as patterns is the Voynich manuscript is about as big as this game right here, 6 by 9 inches. It's very small, but it would be a very large book compared to a person or a thing this size. Now, I also believe that, as we can see here, there are hieroglyphs on the ancient Egyptians, which they used to describe things, and also the hieroglyphs were phonetic. They sounded out things. I believe that the Voynich manuscript is in contrast braille, which they could read with their hands. But I don't believe it was phonetic. I don't believe they could sound it out. They were just a number of symbols that put together formed a meaning somehow. But in order to understand the manuscript, we have to put ourselves in the mind of the maker, of the author, which is a very hard thing to do. But once we do, then everything will make sense. This is another thing I want to mention. This is a human being right here. This is a Greek statue, and you'll notice that it's a famous Greek statue that was made over the years. It's a discus thrower. We don't know if this discus thrower is 5 feet tall, 2 inches tall, or 20 feet tall. It doesn't matter. What matters is the man looks symmetrical. His hands are the correct size for the picture. So is his body language. Now, the Greeks didn't just dream this up, how to just make a picture of a man and cut it in stone and it look perfect. Now, this is another take on it, which will show that it's not so clear. This is another Greek statue, and if you'll notice that everything looks okay except for the guy's right bicep, left bicep. It looks too big. Now, when the Greeks made statues, they found that they could make them any size. But in order to do that and make them look physically, aesthetically pleasing to the eye, they would have to get the proportions right. And what the Greeks did was they found a way to do that using math. And as you can see here, these 3 ladies, one lady has her back to us, but the thing is that her legs are curved, her back is curved as she is grabbing hold of the first lady. It's all done with math. Here is a Greek, well, it's Cleopatra. But the point is that we look at this statue and say to ourselves, well, that looks pretty nice. To make this statue, the way the back leans, the way her shoulders lean, the way her neck is, the way she leans on the pillow, and have the rest of her body in perfect proportion is extremely hard to do. That's why the Greeks came up with a mathematical formula. Now this statue could be, like I say, a foot tall, it could be 100 feet tall. It doesn't matter. This formula works on all statues. And it shows the proportions of how long an arm should be, how long a leg should be, how long everything should be in proportion. Here's another look at it. If these proportions were out of proportion, then the statue would look wrong. This all pertains to the Voynich Manuscript. These tell the proportions of hands, face, eyes to nose, neck height, everything. Now let's just say that the author of the Voynich Manuscript, here's a man catching a discus. You can tell how his lungs are extended, how his biceps are extended, how his head is thrown back. All that's mathematics. Now let's just say that the Voynich Manuscript, they knew what they were doing too. Here is the manuscript with all these young ladies, as we call them. Now we don't know if they're human or not. We just don't know. They all have breasts and lips, and a lot of them have belly buttons and hair. And if you'll notice the way they're sitting, they sit in this pond like humans do. But something had to know that Greek formula to get them to look halfway right. Same thing here. And over here. And up here. Now whatever made this manuscript, we can say for sure that they had two eyes in front of their head. They can see depth perception in 3D. They could see color. They knew how to write, so they probably had a hand with an opposable thumb to hold a writing instrument. Even though, remember, with all this writing, they put it in a book that's this big. So all this writing is absolutely very, very small. Another thing about the writing is there's no mistakes. There is no cross-outs. There is no start-overs, do-overs, and it's done in an ink. The other thing we know is the pictures were put in first, and the writing was done around it. It appears all to be written in one hand. Now, if this was written in one hand, then it was meant to be read by someone. Now, there's a couple other interesting things I've noticed that I've never seen before. I've deciphered part of the pattern, and I'll get to that. But someone had to know about drawing human proportions to be able to do this. Okay, I'm going to post this and then I'll tell you exactly how it was done.